I almost feel bad for doing the voiceover with this music because it's just so good. It literally gives me goosebumps every time I hear it, as do most of the GTA soundtracks from all the games. But I'm not here to glaze just the music for the game. Instead, I'm here to glaze all of it. From the art style to the story and much more. This was a childhood classic of mine, along with Liberty City Stories on the PSP, and everything about it was just perfect. I mean, of course, if you compare it to GTA 5 or GTA 6, it's worse in every aspect. But GTA 3 was such a pivotal game for the franchise, and such a piece of gaming history, that it will forever be one of the greatest in my opinion. It's also worth noting that most of the footage you'll see is from the remastered version of the game taken from my stream, not to get confused with the original version that we'll be talking about. In this video, I'll look into the history behind the game to share some fun facts you may not have known, as well as looking into what was happening in the real world around the time of this game's release, and how it impacted some of the development choices. I'll also look into the atmosphere of the game, and how ahead of its time it was, with the design choices made by Rockstar and Grove Street Games, as well as finally giving my take on the story and the writing for the game, and if it was actually good, looking at it objectively and not blinded by nostalgia. I hope you enjoy the video, and yeah, let's get started. Part 1. The history behind the game. Now, I'm not going to go into the history behind Rockstar too much in this video because it's massive and spans back to when they were known for making Nintendo games under the name DMA Design. Instead, I'm going to stick around the time period of 2001, the year of the game's release, and the pivotal design choices made to the game before it was released. Starting from the beginning, it's important to know that the predecessors to GTA 3, being GTA 1 and 2, were both top-down games. Now, it's crucial to know this, as GTA 3 was actually going to be another top-down GTA game, until the devs at Rockstar were torn between if they should stick to this formula as it had previously worked, or try a different approach, being in the third-person perspective, potentially making the game the first of the franchise to be three-dimensional. And I'm sure they were happy with the end result, as at the time it was the most sold game in the world, with over 11 million copies sold in the year of its release for the PlayStation 2, and around 14.5 million copies sold to date. It's safe to say that it was a massive success, but getting to this point was not easy. The exact date of release for GTA 3 was the 22nd of October 2001, which was only 41 days after the tragic events of September the 11th. And with the game being based in New York, it's safe to say that there were precautions taken to make sure that the game didn't seem too much like New York around the time of these events. 9/11 had much more of an impact on the game than you would think, from little things such as changing the old police car colors from blue to black to make it unique to the game instead of simulating a real police car around this era, and even changing the old siren sounds of these vehicles. However, this wasn't all. It's likely they changed one of the ammunition adverts, as it previously mentioned and insulted Saddam Hussein, which at the time, while tensions were high, was probably for the best. One of the more notable changes though is the art style for the box cover. It used to look like this for the European release of the game, but probably due to a lot of violence being showcased, especially for the events of this time, they decided to go with a different art style, which is now the template for all of the GTA games, thanks to Stephen Bliss, who is an artist for Rockstar from 2001 to 2016, and did many of the iconic images we've come to know and love throughout the life cycle of these games. One last change that I'll summarize is that they removed a whole array of missions, which included things such as blowing up a plane full of civilians, or just outright roaming the streets and burning people with a flamethrower. Just straight up war crimes. They were missions part of a quest line for a character who was removed because of these missions, and they were just no longer appropriate for the game following the events of what was happening in the world at the time. Not that they were ever appropriate anyway, more psychopathic. There was a lot of things they changed post 9/11 that were both minor and major, but I'll only mention those ones for the sake of the video length. But what I can appreciate is that, yeah, some people will say they did it for PR, which that is part of it, but mainly the point I'm trying to make is they didn't have to change anything. However, they did out of respect and made the game more appropriate for the time of its release. This is highly commendable, as lots of people were traumatized and damaged forever following this tragedy, and it's nice to know that Rockstar does actually have a heart deep down. Before adding the Mark II Oppressor into GTA Online, of course. It was one of a kind at that point in time, and will be forever cherished in the hearts of true GTA fans. Part 2. The atmosphere for the game. If I had to use one word to describe the setting for this game, it would be vast. For its time, it was this massive sandbox playground of New York City you could explore in 3D. It was groundbreaking, to put it lightly, and all the components that bring this world together is what we're going to talk about here. First off, the music for the game. I can't really explain the feeling I get when I hear the intro song. I guess it's partly nostalgia, but I got the same feeling from when I first ever heard it to when I hear it now. It's a special kind of excitement, if you will. The music for the game just builds up the anticipation, and when you load it up and hear it finally hits you. It was made by Greg Connor and Stuart Ross, who are both known for making numerous tracks for Rockstar in games such as Manhunt, GTA 1, 2, Vice City, and lots of songs from the GTA 3 radio station known as Give Head Radio. Yep, I'm not making that up. Liberty City Stories, and so many more classic songs of the franchise. Craig worked for Rockstar North from around 1995 to 2014, to which after, he started working for Solid Audio Works in September of 2014, and later in 2017 for Build a Rocket Boy. Stuart, on the other hand, I can only find that he worked for Rockstar North from 1993 to 2003, but not where he is now, so I guess it's a mystery. But it's safe to say that these two are extremely talented and managed to capture the feeling that GTA 3 gives you in a single song. Moving away from musical design now, more onto graphical design. Now, at first glance, the game looks horrible, and for all you new gens that never experienced it back in the day, you may not quite understand, but this game for its time was really impressive. Not only was it in 3D for the first time, but the color palette they chose was fitting for the setting, as well as players being able to actually decipher what certain buildings were, such as hospitals and police stations. Billboards were more than tangible and made the world feel lived in, and so much more. What I found interesting when researching this game is how it looked in the alpha testing. The draw distance was terrible, as you could only see about 30 feet in front of you. The textures were a lot more pixelated and the colors were brighter, making it seem cartoony, which, if you ignore the running animation for the game, wasn't what Rockstar was trying to achieve. I'm well aware that the alpha testing wasn't going to be the final product regardless, but I'm just making the point that I'm glad that these changes were made specifically. And the state it was released in does have its flaws, but I wouldn't have wanted it to be any different than how it is today. The game's story was based in 2001 New York, so you know Rockstar had to go over the top with the New York accents and stereotypical voice lines. These hints of comedy aren't shoved in your face every 2 seconds, but rather catch you off guard every now and then, making you genuinely chuckle at least a little bit. Not only that, but as always, the radio stations also have humor present. The adverts in between songs are comedic, but take a less conventional route. By this, I mean they don't just ask you why the chicken crossed the road. Instead, it's more of a story that leaves you thinking, oh, I get it. Or just, once again, will catch you off guard and make you laugh. I like how the comedy in the game isn't too present, but yet it's still there, as it's good contrast for the gritty world of crime and violence you're thrown into. And it just works really well by building up the atmosphere even more. Part 3. The story. Keep in mind that this game is old. I'm talking 23, almost 24 years old, so it's safe to say the writing and voice acting wasn't really up there compared to how we have it today in much bigger titles. But that's not a fair comparison. I can't just compare GTA 3 to The Last of Us, for example. So what other games were around back when this one released? Well, games such as Baldur's Gate 2, Silent Hill 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, and many more. Arguably, a lot of these games do have better storytelling in them, and to an extent, I would agree. But you know what they don't have? Open world. Okay, well, some of them technically do, but I mean not to the scale that GTA 3 had it. I know that it isn't really important when it comes to the story, but I do think it has some relevance. The time it takes to travel to a mission gives you time to muster up what might happen next, or time to go get ammo for weapons. These steps you take en route to your mission almost becomes a part of the story. What I'm trying to say is that in my opinion, GTA 3 didn't have the best story, or at least the concept was there, but the execution could have been better. However, it sets the stage for your imagination to take the wheel, if you will, letting you have creative and imaginative freedom when playing through it. I'd also like to mention the character development. Claude, the person who you play as, has none. I mean 0. You don't have a voice, and that's fine as it was a design choice, but it makes for quite a static character as you play. You could argue that you, the player, are essentially Claude, and you're meant to kind of imagine how you would respond to something, but I thought that was worth mentioning. Another instance where you can see it is with Salvatore Leone, the leader of the Mafia in the game. At one point in the story, he's your best bud, and at the next, he betrays you. It's like flicking a light switch. Nothing led up to this moment, nothing really showed that it was going to happen until the mission comes around, and you can kind of tell he's setting you up based off the mission he gives you.
I'm proud of you, my boy. You kicked the shit out of those grease balls.
I did?
I just take it to the crusher before the cops find it.
That seems very, very simple. This mission seems very easy, and it's making me worried. The car's a trap. Meet me. Oh my god, I knew it. Now, this is explained why he does it in the story, but I feel it could have been executed better. And remember, this isn't the only time where character development is off throughout the game, but I won't go into each character now, or that'll just take too long. But yeah, one last thing that I found quite interesting is the voice actor for Salvatore Leone was Frank Vincent, who sadly passed away in 2017 on the 13th of September, was in many films from around 1990 all the way up to 2014, featured in Goodfellas, which is a very popular film, all the way to a show called Mr. Pickle. That's right, Mr. Pickle, which I found quite funny. Just the contrast of the two shows, and even just the game compared to Mr. Pickle is just such a leap. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And that's it. That is my take on GTA 3. I hope I helped someone learn something new about the game, as it really is such an importance to the franchise of GTA as we know it. Even if you don't like the game, you're gonna have to give credit where it's due, and the history behind the game is just genuinely interesting. I only scratched the surface, and there's so much more I wanted to include, but I have to try and keep the videos short, so if you're interested, I urge you to do a bit of digging and let me know what you find. I'll shamelessly plug the Discord in the top pinned comment if you wanted to join the community and tell me there. But yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.